Welcome everyone to one more episode of our podcast, Real AI Now. Today we have a special guest. His name is Kit Cox. He's the founder and CEO of Enate. Welcome. Good to have you, Kit.
Great to see you. Great to see you and be talking to you. Thanks, Paulo.
So it's great to have you here. Kit, you're an entrepreneur with lots of experience. I see 15 years of experience in BPO and technology. You founded Enate as a company. So I jumped right into it. You guys work in automation, right? And so keywords like automation, BPM, RPA, why is it important? Why do we need that?
Well, in a way, it's just when you stand right back,
Yeah.
It's because all of these technologies get deployed where two organizations or two bits of the world are meeting each other. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And those two bits of the world aren't the same. Yeah. I've got my rules for how I deal with my finance. You've got your rules. Yeah.
Right.
You're running a payroll in Spain. I'm running a payroll in the UK. There are different rules in the country. Yeah.
Right.
So, and I've got rules that I set up in my company, and then I need to figure out how those rules or how that data interoperates with the rules in that country or from that supplier. Yeah. So you've got all these businesses and trying to interact with each other, and it's just not very standard. And if it was very standard, we'd have all automated it in our ERP systems years ago. And we wouldn't need any of this other extraneous stuff around it. Shared services wouldn't exist. BPO companies wouldn't exist. Yeah, because it would all just run smoothly in ERP systems. Yeah. But it doesn't, because the world is not very standard.
And also cross companies, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So two companies, you send me data in a format that works for your systems. I've got to deal with it in my systems. Yeah. Every interaction like that where an organization ends up touching the outside world, whether that's a supplier, a customer, a person, every single one of those has some kind of non-standard. A government, has some kind of non-standard with it. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's those non-standards that means that we have to create infrastructure, create teams, create policies, create rules to manage them. Yeah. And then what people have then been trying to do is to go, great. We used to have hundreds and hundreds of people interpreting those rules and dealing with that mix. But now there's the ability to go, well, let's have slightly fewer people dealing with that. Let's try and automate some more of those things, but automate them in a way that's a bit more flexible. And that's probably the big difference. Yeah. Why have we not done it in ERP systems? Because they're really inflexible.
Okay. So there's two things, or at least two things that I picked up on what you said. One is, you talked a lot about interfaces between two different organizations, or companies, governments, whatever organizations they are. But I also see that, this lack of standardization or this integration is required also within one single organization.
Oh, yeah.
So this, we've got, as a small company, we've got a CRM, we've got an HR software, we've got another software for accounting or for invoicing, whatever. So we don't have one single ERP that does everything.
Yeah.
Even if we did, it would probably be what you just said, not flexible enough, because we would always have a process that would not fit the way the ERP works. Is it about that too, about solving that kind of problem?
Absolutely. Because all of those are they're further versions of the outside world coming into your business. Somebody else has written those systems. Yeah.
Right.
and as businesses grow, I mean, it's great. I mean, I run a business. We're growing organically. We're selling stuff, but at some point, we may well grow inorganically. We may well go and buy another business, and they come and land in with a whole smorgasbord of other systems. Yeah,
Yeah.
And it becomes incredibly difficult to then either standardize across them. It's just history gets baked into them, and you either go and spend gajillions of dollars trying to standardize and get onto one platform, and if you've got endless resources, hunky dory, go for it. But not everybody does, and actually using things like business process management, orchestration, RPA are ways of tackling the bits of automation that matter, that actually give you some value quite quickly, without trying to rip up everything and go, that system has got to go, this interface to our clients has got to be standard, all those really mega projects.
Okay. So I if you don't mind, I would like us to take a step back a bit, and I also probably need this, but I think our listeners will appreciate to hear about. You mentioned 3 or 4 terms. One was BPO, the other one was BPM. You also mentioned ERP and RPA. At least those 4, right?
Cut through some jargon.
Could we quickly walk through those, each one of those? Let's start with, and then automation in general, right? Which is applied. So could we start? I would say we start with BPM, go to, and then we move to BPO, ERP, and then RPA. So what is BPM?
So BPM stands for Business Process Management. So, and it's a type of software system that's really been, they started coming out early 2000s, and they're a way for people to graphically define and then execute business processes. Processes just being a way of encapsulating rules for that, for a particular business.
Example, what is an example of a BPM software?
So some BPM players, so Pegasystems is a big BPM player, Appian is a big BPM player, Bizarji, Camunda. Those are all classical business process management kind of vendors.
I'm guessing also the big tech vendors also have BPM software like IBM or
IBM,
Oracle.
IBM's got a corner of it. Oracle's got a corner of it. It's as an area, it's something that came out as a great idea, but actually the way that it was implemented meant that it was really hard to do, because
it takes a lot of work.
It took an eternity. Because an eternity.
I mean, I've been involved. I was never like really managing any BPM project, but I was involved. And I saw how hard it is and how many people need to be involved in formalizing those processes and taking those things. Sometimes taking something that is already exists, a process that is old, and try to formalize it in a way that a software can be executed in the software. And this is really hard because there's always exceptions. There's
excruciatingly painful. And that non-standard thing that I was talking about. Well, if you want to implement kind of classical business process management, and you're trying to standardize a process between Belgium and Brazil, let's say. Good luck. Exactly. Good luck. You have to try and get them in the same room and try and get them to agree, and they don't. Or you have to encapsulate all the variants in one model, and ultimately most people who then were actually running those processes, they don't they don't really care about running them to that level of granularity.
Yeah.
It's not, yes, it's important, but it's not that important. Yeah.
Well, I guess it depends on the process, right? There are processes that are critical, but there are others that are just
Exactly. There are others that were just
admin
working
processes.
okay beforehand.
Yeah.
Somebody had to get into this absolutely crazy activity of going, tell me everything, absolutely everything, every rule, tell me everything that might go wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's always something that was not formalized, was not mentioned.
Of course.
It's always an exception.
Tell me the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Well, you're going to forget some bits.
Of course. Yeah, that's my experience too. There was a big investment upfront, those kind of projects, and they are connected to ERP projects. So there is a bridge to that. Are always painful. I've never seen one that went very smoothly. Maybe because I've seen them being implemented in large organizations, which makes it even harder. But in general, you don't hear good things about the success of these projects or the implementing such things. So BPM, what about BPO?
So BPO is then business process outsourcing.
Outsourcing.
So that is one of the types of outsourcing where you're actually trying to get a third-party supplier to take a whole area out of your organization and supply it back to you as a service. So whether that's wanting to carve out your finance function, and they supply it back to you as a service, or your HR function. It started with IT, whether you want to outsource your IT operation. So
it happens also.
Yeah.
I worked sometime in insurance. Many insurance companies outsource their claims management, for example.
Absolutely. And the principle of business process outsourcing was that if you're a big insurer, let's take that insurance example. If you're a big insurer, there are some things that are really important to you. How you underwrite is probably quite important to you, how you manage risk. Your brand is really important to you, how you market and stuff like that. But actually, some of those more mundane back office processes, like how do I manage a car insurance? They're pretty standard. They're not something that you're differentiating on. And the idea of business process outsourcing was you get companies that specialize in it to do the stuff that you don't differentiate your business on.
And I disagree a little bit with that. I think that the way insurance company handles claims is a differentiator, and people like to work with insurance companies that are not hard.
I do agree. So put it this way.
But I see the point.
For some.
I see the point. So in theory, they tend to outsource things that are not their key, like a competitive advantage. And insurance companies tend to think that claims it's not. I believe it is, and it will become more and more, because I want an insurance company that pays the claims and doesn't make it difficult for me to get my money.
Well, we've all had that experience, haven't we?
Exactly.
It is funny, isn't it? That you're talking about just bad customer service, really, aren't you?
Actually, yes.
and actually, good customer service for some brands is totally how they differentiate.
Exactly.
Whereas there are definitely other brands that differentiate by being cheap, and you have some expectations that comes with that, or you should
which is also okay. If I go for a cheap solution, I probably lower my expectations accordingly. And but I see the point. So business process management, business process outsourcing. You also mentioned ERP. What is the connection between BPM and ERP?
So ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. It's another type of computer system so examples of which are SAP. Everyone's heard of SAP, even though lots of people go, what exactly does it do? And things, and Oracle is another, the two big ERP systems are SAP and Oracle. Yeah. And there are some smaller ones like, Microsoft Dynamics and things like that. So they are systems that encapsulate the data set and data model and rules around that data for key bits of people's businesses. So SAP Finance encapsulates the rules for how does a company run its accounts?
Right.
How do the ledgers work? How does the statement of accounts work? How do you do invoice processing? Do you work with purchase orders? How does your bill of materials work? All of those kind of things.
And how does that relate to BPM?
So if ERP has all the data in it, then business process management is a way of managing how some of that data changes, not inside, but without doing it inside the ERP system. Okay. So
so it comes on top of the ERP.
Comes on top of. If business process management is slow and hard to implement and a complicated game, nothing compared to implementing an ERP system, which is, particularly for big organizations, is super hard. Yeah.
Especially if you have like legacy processes and legacy ways of working now coming in, try to reverse engineer that is very hard. Yeah.
Absolutely. If you've had,
we all heard about
disaster
SAP implementations.
Yeah.
And that's not because of SAP. It's just because it's a hard problem to solve with SAP or with any software.
Yeah. You're just choosing to do something very hard. So that's how those two relate. Business process management tended to be implemented either to manage processes sitting on top of ERP or across join up processes between an ERP system and some other really important systems within a business. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've established a bit some of the basics. BPM, ERP. BPO is not really software. It's more something that companies do outsourcing. Now let's move to the hot topic, automation, right?
Yeah.
And in automation, there's different ways of automating, and now we are talking about processes. I'm guessing. When you automate something, so one of the technologies that comes to mind is RPA, but there's others, including, I think, what your company does. And I'd like to touch that later because it's different from RPA, and it's an interesting concept. There is some uniqueness about it. There's something refreshing, let's say, about it. Let's talk about RPA first. How does RPA fit that puzzle that we just talked about?
Sure. So I like to think of this as, because we've spent the last 15 minutes talking about this computer system and that computer system, and I'm sure a whole bunch of the listeners will be going, "Well, why isn't that automation? Why are you talking about something else as automation?" And
well, it is partially already,
and it might, of course, it is. Absolutely, it is. Yeah.
We just don't call it that.
But it's just not being called that. And actually, I think the main reason is it's much less about what's happening. It's about who's doing it. So RPA, which stands for robotic process automation, which is a technology that really started to blossom in the mid 2010s kind of time.
Yeah, like 10 years ago.
Yeah. That technology was really delivered, and people got excited about it because it was a way that business users who were having to put up with the ERP system and the business process management system that might have been implemented 10 years ago, but the IT department hasn't got time to change them or manage them or update them or basically keep them running at the pace the business is trying to move. RPA was a technology that business users, if you just in the finance department, in the HR department, felt that they could use to start automating some bits of their work themselves without having to turn around to the IT department and say, can you do that for me? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it could do that because
a bit like Excel.
yeah, well, yeah, yeah. So we've all, everybody that's worked in pretty much any decent sized organizations has gone, here's the stuff that happens in the core systems, and here's all the rest of the important stuff we do in Excel.
Yeah.
And actually RPA was just another Excel like tool. It's something that I can pick up, get hold of, and actually start working with. And it worked effectively by simulating a person clicking buttons through a user interface. That was the robotic bit, which meant that you didn't even have to tell the IT department because as far as they can see, it's just something clicking the buttons. Yeah. It wasn't really that you didn't have to tell IT, but that was the idea
but that was the power. So it's a tool that empowers business people, exactly like Excel does.
Exactly.
And they don't have to try to put it to express it in a slightly different way. So they don't have to wait for IT to implement certain things, certain rules, certain new ways of working in the software itself, in the ERP or in the BPM that we talked about. Because that takes time and it takes investment, and it's not always clear. Sometimes they don't have the time or the resources to do it. Sometimes it's not clear that there is a return, that it is worth to invest in that. So, but it's still worth empowering the business users to do things faster, and especially repetitive things or things that take a long time. And this is the kind of tool for that, right? RPA is a tool that can help with that, but it can do other things, right? It can also help the IT people, doesn't it?
It can help the IT people, but really I'm just leaning on why did it really take off? Why was it exciting? And it was because it was about changing the who could do stuff, not quite so much what could be done.
Right. So I can, let's say I have the job of going to the ERP system, and I copy the data of some invoice that is, well, there is an invoice that is due, that is overdue, and I need to go and remind that customer that they haven't paid, for example. That means I go to the invoice system, I look at the invoices that are overdue, then I go and look at the contact person for that invoice, and I open Outlook, I draft an email, I copy some data from the invoice number, whatever, and then I press send. Now, and I have to do this 50 times per day, right? Now, there is software that automates this stuff, but if you don't have it, now you could build an RPA robot that does exactly what I said, and it does it every day.
Exactly.
And I just, once the robot is built, I just push the button one time and watch the robot work.
Exactly. And it's an example of, you described that as a really clear, do this, then do that, then do that, then do that, click this, copy that. And that's what RPA is really good at. Yeah. It's a way of automating simple, standard, rules-based activities that you have to do quite a lot of times and are quite boring. It's a really good tool for that.
The other day I was talking to a customer that she said she was like showing me a task that she solved in less than a minute, and she said that, well, I do this 1,000 times per day.
It's amazing how it focuses the mind.
No, it was not 1,000 times per day. No. I'm exaggerating. She said 100 times per hour. And sometimes I spend 2 hours in a row doing it. And so that's 200 pieces of work like that a day. This is so tedious. This is not what humans are meant to do.
So exactly. So that kind of use case, is fantastic. Yeah, for RPA. Yeah, and when RPAs and industries then kind of morphed. Yeah, I'm sure we'll end up talking a bit about where things are morphed and how AI comes in and all sorts of stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that's where it started. With being able to do these simple, and I know it's got the word process in the middle of it, which is totally misleading. Yeah, actually, what RPA does is it automates tasks.
So it should be called robotic task automation.
It should be called robotic task automation.
I agree. It's not. It does not automate processes at all.
And actually, one of the things that went really wrong at the start of the industry was people getting excited about the word process in the middle of it and accidentally trying to automate entire processes in it, which doesn't work very well.
Well, it can automate the task of an actor within a process. Yeah. And if you automate more than one, then you might end up automating large part of processes, but not the whole process itself, right? And this is the misconception here.
Exactly. And you could well have got much more value by going and automating another task in another process without trying to eat the whole, if you were trying to eat the whole end-to-end process, might not have been the best use of your time. But actually the thing that caused RPA to take off and get people get excited about it, this fundamental that business people can start taking ownership of how their systems work to help them do their work. That I think is the big trend that we are going to be seeing over the coming years. Short.
So another thing before we move on, where I see RPA, so definitely empowering business people, right? IT departments are usually underwater. They don't have time to accommodate more. I rarely have seen an IT department that has free time. I've actually never seen that. And
there's a massive skills crisis, isn't there? Yeah.
And they need to do more with less, right? And budgets are cut. They're seen as a cost center everywhere, and basically and the business people get annoyed at the IT people that are underwater because they are slow and they don't do what they need, and which I think is totally unfair. I've been in both sides and I know that it's unfair for the IT people. But anyway, and RPA empowers business people. We have, for example, a situation where our customer has a legacy software. So the software there has no maintenance anymore. It's just being kept alive. So the only way before they migrate to new software, which is going to take years, the only way to introduce some efficiency improvement there is with RPA. There's no other way. So it's also a way to work with legacy software, right? And
if the only way of integrating, quote unquote, with that legacy system is by clicking and typing things in its user interface, classical RPA is the only thing that you can use.
And sometimes it's really the only thing, right? And that's a blessing. And that's a blessing, the fact that it exists, this technology.
So, and that, I mean, you mentioned insurance again. There are lots of insurance companies that still run on old green screen systems,
and banks
to run vast swathes of their fundamental business. And the whole digital transformation of banking and things like that is just layer upon layer upon layer of shiny on top of something that can be really ancient.
You've got like mobile apps and shiny online banking software running on top of legacy mainframe systems. Written in COBOL. Right? Now this is true, and it's going to be like that for many years to come. So the legacy is one of the constants in technology and in IT and in software, and it's something that RPA helps with, right? And so it's not really the most elegant thing to do technically. It's not elegant at all, but it does solve problems, and it works. Yeah.
And there's a bit of a tragedy actually that I've been on the IT side, I've been on the business side, and I agree with you. Both of them are totally under the pump. They're totally under pressure. But it's a bit of a tragedy that IT coined this term shadow IT, like it's a bad thing. So when the business is picking up and writing macros in spreadsheets and doing things in RPA, the IT department kind of turned their noses up quite often and went, "Oh, that's bad. That's shadow IT." It's not real IT. That's shadow IT. And actually, unfortunately, it's just an arrogant reflection of it only exists because of the failure of the IT organization to do what the business needs them to do. They're not doing it for fun. They're doing it because they need to do it. So actually, words like shadow IT, that doesn't help. They just erect barriers, and it doesn't help. Everybody's trying to get to the same objective. They're trying to do more stuff with less time and less people.
I agree. So let's move to what you guys do. Enate. We talked about this before, but could you tell us a bit about what Enate does and how is that different from what we've discussed until now, and what is the new space that you are occupying, the new class of problems that you are solving that was not easy to solve before?
Sure. So the way that we look at it, firstly, we call what we do orchestration.
Okay.
So Enate is an orchestration system, a process orchestration system. And we've already talked about lots of different technologies that have the word process in the middle of them. So what's special or different about this? Well, if you think that we talked about RPA, robotic process automation, as actually it's task automation, but it was about putting that task automation in the hands of business people. Then if we row back to the start of our conversation where we talked about business process management,
right?
Business process management is technology that actually was there to manage longer running end-to-end business processes, but it wasn't in the hands of the business people. So what we're doing with process orchestration is putting that ability to run longer business processes that actually have people involved in delivering them, and things like RPA involved in delivering them.
Robots.
But put that in the hands of business people.
Okay.
So all of that stuff that we talked about around, it's a great idea for business process management, but it took forever to implement, and it was a real headache, and nobody could agree on the rules and all of those kind of things. That's the stuff that we're trying to address by putting that in the hands of the business people who actually do it day to day, and give them the flexibility to tweak it and change and improve it on an ongoing basis.
Okay.
And so that's the first idea. And then the second idea is then to go, those processes that the business people are now in charge of, and they're managing their work in a system like Enate or another orchestration system. You start with, I might have automated one or two tasks with an RPA system, but we're already seeing it now. There are many other different task-based automation technologies that are popping into the market. So, and those are coming from all sorts of different companies, startups, traditional vendors, all sorts of things. And actually the challenge for a business is then to go, how do I make use of those at the right time that it becomes relevant to me? So, and what we're trying to do with orchestration is to give you give you a fabric, a framework that you can manage the switch between actually that task was done by a person and now it's done by this particular automation technology.
Okay. That sounds very powerful. Sounds very interesting. So could we dig a bit deeper into an example?
Sure.
Like finance, let's say.
Yeah.
So two things that I would like to ask you. One is, who is the person in finance, for example, in a medium-sized company? What kind of profile a person is going to use that technology to automate or to orchestrate processes, and what kind of processes are they going to manage?
Sure. So most finance organizations have got some kind of idea that they call it something like finance operations.
Yeah.
Which kind of means all of the transactional, repetitive areas of finance.
Mm-hmm.
It's things like paying invoices. It's managing procurement of stuff that the business is buying. It's about sending out bills to customers and getting the cash in from those customers.
Mm-hmm.
It's about managing the financial reporting for the business.
Mm-hmm.
There's other
it's probably controlling as well.
Yeah. So those are the things that tend to get wrapped up into finance operations.
Mm-hmm.
And in some businesses, not all, but increasingly large numbers, those operational bits get spun out into a shared service center, or sometimes called a global business service. And all that is a way of saying, look, we had a finance operations team in the UK for our UK business. We had a finance operations team in France and one in Spain. And actually, why don't we just have one big finance operations team that can deal with all of those countries?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So those are the people that we're talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the tool that is the system that is the backbone for what they do is one of those ERP systems. Yeah.
But like SAP or
like SAP, like Oracle, like Dynamics.
Yeah.
So that's the backbone for what they do. Yeah. Every invoice that a company pays at some point ends up in that ERP system. Every purchase order that somebody raises, every bill that they send out, at some point, some point it better end up in the ERP system, because that's what they end up reporting back to the market.
Right.
It is the source of truth.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that that's where most of the work for finance operations happens.
Mm-hmm.
Because most of the work that finance operations end up doing actually sits outside that ERP system. It sits in the realm of communications. Sometimes it sits in the realm of paper. Quite often it sits in the realm of Excel.
Mm-hmm.
And once all of that work's been done, finally the truth ends up in the ERP system. So all of that management of exceptions, so what those teams spend their time doing is managing the edge cases. So, and you can think of it like a form of service delivery, and that's why it gets spun out into a shared service.
Mm-hmm.
And every single service has regardless of what service it is, it's got a pretty basic structure to it. It is you get something that triggers the service happening.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say that's you've received an email.
Right.
That's triggering something to happen. You've received an email,
like with an invoice.
And let's take this example. That email's got an invoice on it. So the first thing in every single service delivery environment the world over that you have to do is figure out what the thing that you're being asked to do is.
Right.
So you've got an email, which is unstructured. It's got an invoice attached to it, which is semi-structured. Your company's invoice does not look like my company's invoice. It's got most of the same data on it, probably, but it's not going to be. It's a long way from identical.
Yeah.
So the first bit of every service is figure out what I'm being asked to do. Yeah. The second bit of every service then is then assemble the data that I'm going to need. Once I know what I've got to do, assemble the data that I'm going to need to be able to do it. So let's follow this invoice example through.
Mm-hmm.
To process an invoice, I need to firstly understand if it's an invoice for something that we've actually decided we're going to buy. Because believe it or not, one of the common sources of fraud is for people to send invoices for stuff that the company hasn't even bought. Yeah. And lots of companies end up paying them. So that's why the whole purchase order thing became something. Mm-hmm. So you got to figure out, is this somebody asking for money for something we've actually bought? So that means you either need to go and find a purchase order for it in the ERP system.
Mm-hmm.
Or if a purchase order doesn't exist, you need to go and find the person in the business who's bought it.
Right.
Now, if there's a purchase order in the ERP system, okay, that tends to be quite easy at that point, because at that point you're going, great, is the stuff that I'm expecting from the purchase order? Yeah, I've said I'm going to buy 32, green Lego bricks at 2 cents each. Well, does my invoice say 32 Lego bricks at 3 cents each? Yeah. And then there's a third bit to that as well, which is to go, great.
Sometimes there's approval involved.
Yeah. Well, and that one where great, I've got an invoice, but I haven't got a purchase order for it. Well, at that point, I need to go and find the person that has bought it and make sure that the payment of that invoice is approved at that point.
Yeah.
Yes, you can sometimes implement that in an ERP system, and some organizations do. But back to that, have IT got the time to go and put all those rules into the ERP system? And do those rules change at a pace that IT are going to struggle to keep up with? Well, the answer to both of those. So the first question is no, IT haven't got the time in the first place. Mm-hmm. Secondly, the rules change a lot. Mm-hmm. So it's a really good example for, well, that's where you kind of want to manage that work and manage those rules outside. Yeah. And once you've got that data together, so great, we've figured out what we're doing, which right now, best way of doing that is people. People are really good at understanding that. You've gone and got the data together to understand, actually, is this an invoice that I've got to go and check against the purchase order and stuff like that? Or is it something I've got to go and find human beings to approve? Mm-hmm. And then the third bit of every service is just go and do it.
Okay.
Figure out what you've got to do.
Right.
You've got the data together. Now just go and do it. And the just go and do it bit, you're off into following some predictable steps, mostly following some predictable steps and getting that done. And at the end of those predictable steps, it ends up with something going into the ERP system that says, this invoice is good for payment.
Okay. Right. So what you just described could also be what's done in the BPM system, right? So or in an ERP system, or a mixture of both. So I understand that the difference between that and what your company is doing, Enate, is you are sort of democratizing that, empowering business people, not IT, well, also IT, but in this case, business people that were not empowered before, to introduce this kind of orchestration and rules by themselves. They don't need deep technical knowledge to do it.
Exactly.
Okay.
So great. That process that we just described, you want to go and set that up and have it run in a structured and repeatable and measurable way that you can then start applying different types of automation to. So the business team, the finance operations team, can set that up in Enate by themselves, get it running, and then you start getting a data set that goes, you know what, we could save some money if we automated that task within it. Yeah.
Okay. And that's where AI comes in?
That's where AI comes in as one of the ways that you can automate different tasks.
Okay. So
Uh,
what are then the ways? So we talked about automation. We know that one of the ways is RPA or similar task automating technology. I would like to bring up the topic of AI. This is an AI podcast, so but let's quickly walk through those. So what are the different ways that you can actually automate those tasks? RPA is one of them. We talked about that. What else?
No, I'm going to go with my people who've seen me kind of talk at conferences and stuff. I have a way of explaining this with Lego, which I think is the best way of explaining.
Go ahead.
And I run workshops where I get people to build their business processes out of Lego.
Okay.
There's one rule that goes with the Lego game, and the rule is that different colors of Lego brick represent different kind of basic human competencies.
Mm-hmm.
So the blue bricks, I came prepared with some. The blue bricks are where you're reading. You're reading and understanding long form text. Yeah.
Okay.
And the red bricks are where you're writing. Yeah.
Okay.
So you got to write an email. You've got a basic human skill of writing. Yeah. The yellow bricks are that's where you're having a conversation like we're having now. Yeah. You're having a two-way chat.
Mm-hmm.
The black bricks are where you're just kind of using your ability to follow rules, type, do that kind of RPA stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are the brown bricks are ones where you're using your experience to solve a problem. Yeah, and the green bricks are where you're solving a novel problem that you've never seen before. And the pink bricks are where you're empathizing with another human. Yeah.
All right.
So all of these really basic cognitive capabilities of people. And the reason to get people to go and build processes out of Lego and have them as different colors is that actually you can automate each of those different capabilities with a different technology that very often comes from a different vendor.
Mm-hmm.
That will be relevant to your business at a different point in time and sometimes may never be relevant to your business.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all called AI. But we can get specific then. As soon as we've gone,
right.
They're all different flavors.
We had a guest here from Walt Meyer from a company called Expert AI. He said that, just summarizing one of the things that he said that AI as a term is not useful.
Yeah, it's not a thing. Yeah.
Because it means all these different things, and that just confuses people.
Yeah.
So I like to refer to specific things that a computer system can do, specific types of problems or more specific things, because when I say that I do AI, nobody understands. And he's right. AI is all these things, right?
Yeah. So that's why we came up with the Lego brick thing. And actually it really works. It's a way that you can go, right, the blue bricks.
It's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. The blue bricks, which are about reading. Okay. There is a technology called intelligent document processing. That's the bit of the market.
Right.
It's a corner of AI, but it's called intelligent document processing.
Right. And that's the part that reads the email, for example.
And that's the technology. If you want to read a scanned document or something like that, or an email, that's the technology used to do that. And with that, one thing that you can do is categorize it.
Yeah.
So one thing that most AI machine learning is really good at is categorization. So great, you want to categorize a document. Is it an invoice or a statement of account or a copy of somebody's passport, whatever? Yeah. The second thing that you can do is then extract data from it.
Mm-hmm.
So you go, great, it is an invoice. That means there should be a total field on it somewhere. There should be a tax field on it somewhere. There should be a purchase order number. There should be a supplier name. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the last thing you can do, this is kind of particular little use case for it, but is you can break documents up. Yeah. So you can go, actually, here's somebody they've sent me one document that's actually 25 documents in one PDF. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So break them up, because actually I need to handle those as 25 different things, not one big thing. Yeah.
Right.
So that's the Blue Brick technology. That's intelligent document processing.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, I was at a HFS, the analyst company HFS event recently, where they've got a whole load of service delivery leaders from shared services and BPO companies. And when they were asked, what's the technology that you're most interested in over the next year to 18 months, it was intelligent document processing. This was just before Christmas. So I think the answer might be different now, but we'll come on to that in a second.
Right. So that's the reading part. Then
that's the reading part.
Like moving on to, if we take that process that you described before, I get an email with an invoice. Now that first part of the task, or the first part of that process, is the blue brick that you were talking about, isn't it? And that could be automated using an AI system called intelligent document processing. Let's do it this way. So what would be the next step then?
Okay, great.
So you classified it as an invoice. You say, okay, seems like this is an invoice. It is an invoice with high confidence. I could even extract some information out of it. And now, what's the next step? And what color of brick is that? And
okay, so the next step is then going to be starting to get the data. So I've got some data out of it. Let's say that I've got the total, I've got the supplier that it's from. They've included the
purchase order number,
the contact details. Well, I'm going to give you one that hasn't got a purchase order on it, just to make it more complicated.
Okay.
They've included the contact details of the buyer in the company.
Right.
Great. So I've got that much information. And at that point, I need to go, firstly, I'm just going to go off into my ERP system. So I'm now into the get the data together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I am still going to go off into my ERP system and go, have we got a purchase order for this? But they mistakenly didn't put it on the invoice. Yeah. So I'm off into fairly boring stuff there. I'm going log into the ERP system, go and do some queries against it for this supplier and stuff like that. That's kind of gray stuff. That stuff I could do with RPA, or I could do it if I've got a more modern ERP system with a technology which actually isn't part of the AI space. It's called Integration Platform as a Service, IPaaS.
Mm-hmm.
So I could go and make some API calls to do that. Yeah. Cool. So then I've got that. But then, great, it comes back and goes, no, we don't have a purchase order for this. Okay. So at which point in the orchestration, we go, wow, okay, we need to go and send an email out to the buyer to go, did you buy this?
Yeah.
Do you want to pay this invoice? So we then need to get into writing. We need to write them an email. Red brick. Right. Now, we all got pretty excited recently about, crikey, we've got some technology that that you can automate writing stuff with. It's called generative AI. It's it's GPT, it's Bard, it's large language models. Yeah. So that's where it comes in. And this is a beautiful example of how what you are able to automate changes and will change over the next months, years at crazy pace. Right. 6 months ago, you could not automate red bricks reliably.
No.
Pretty much now you can. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could use templates, right? So, so in this particular case, if it's just really about, do you approve this invoice, right? Did you buy this? Do you approve this invoice? Is this legit? Maybe that's always the same email. But I agree with you. I mean, it wasn't without generative AI, without these large language models, you couldn't easily draft an email just like that without some templating, very complicated templating rules. Yeah.
Exactly. Or the ability to go, and we've done some stuff recently where in Enate where we're calling out to the Microsoft private version of GPT, going, okay, fine, we've done that first bit of extracting the data. This is the stuff that we think is missing for us to be able to do that type of transaction. Just go and write me a nice customer-centric email to go and ask for this missing information. Yeah. And, it's just in whatever language you want. And
it's quite powerful.
Yeah. It's just wonderful at it. Yeah. It's just wonderful at it. Great. So that's a red brick. Yeah. And then let's say you might have a bit of a to and fro conversation at that point with, something comes back in and goes, and they go, well, I did order it, but actually they've invoices for 2 more than that. Well, great. That's another email that's ending up going out to the supplier. But in the middle of that, key bit, in the middle of that, probably you've got a person involved. Yeah, because yes, you could go and bake all of this down into rules.
Yeah,
but life's too short. Yeah. And actually, we're currently in the area where that kind of works pretty well with people getting involved. And somebody in finance operations is then going to go, okay, fine. I understand what you wanted to buy. I will deal with the supplier. We'll pay them for what we owe them. Yeah. And we'll crack on. So, and then for that process, you get into a fair bit more of that kind of to and fro. Yeah. There is a place that within that process.
In the end, you need to somehow at some point where you need to enter the data in the ERP or whatever.
Yeah. Which is where we go back to another kind of gray brick. It's a kind of RPA, iPad.
That could be automated. Yeah.
Yeah. That absolutely could be automated. Yeah. Mostly things that are in the just do it camp. Yeah. You can automate with one of those, with a tool like RPA or iPass or something like that. Yeah. But the whole idea is that joining these different tools together and actually allowing them to go, a few weeks ago, you didn't have a red brick. Now you have. Joining all of those together from end to end, from the moment that the email comes through, comes in with the invoice on, to the moment all is good. That's what orchestration is there to do. That's what Enate's there to do. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. To give you when we're playing it with Lego, we go, look, we're just the base plate that you build on.
Very interesting approach with the Legos. I've never seen that before. I've seen a lot of business process diagrams.
Exactly. Lego's just a boatload more fun.
Indeed. You wanted to say something. I just interrupted you.
No, there is a way that you can get more sophisticated in that process that we talked about. So a good friend of mine, a guy called Lee Coulter, who he used to run Ascension Healthcare's finance operations. Like your massive US healthcare organization.
Okay.
When people talk about automation, very often they're talking about, look, we managed to do the same thing with a little bit less human effort. And look, we saved a little bit of money by doing that. Trouble is, that's mostly a bit of a so what business case.
Indeed.
Yeah. It's one of the things I always found a bit sad about RPA business cases was them being described in hours saved. Yeah. Well, hours saved is not very commonly transferable to money saved. Yeah.
Right.
And it's also still a bit so what. But Lee said, yeah, we did the stuff that I just talked about there in terms of intelligent document processing and RPA and things. But they deployed some brown bricks. So they built some dedicated machine learning algorithms. So this is where you're using your experience to spot patterns and solve problems. One of the things in accounts payable, accounts payable particularly, is there are lots of reasons that an invoice can end up getting disputed. And there are lots of things that can go wrong. And actually, suppliers are quite often trying to game the system as well. Yeah, it is really common to go, no, we've changed that. We've changed the product number. Sorry. Yeah, so the product number on the box that we sent you isn't right. Or no, we only put 9 things in a box of that now rather than 10. All sorts of stuff. So at Ascension, they built, I think it was 12 dedicated machine learning algorithms to spot and identify and address all of these problems. So by feeding them data and then training these models in a very specific way. And at the end of that, so let's say they had 100 people running their accounts payable operation. And after they'd spent millions of dollars automating it, they still had 100 people running their accounts payable operation. But they'd saved $250 million a year in overpayments on invoices. They'd released, because there was the wrong number of swabs in a box, or there was all of those kind of things. $250 million. They'd released something approaching $1 billion of working capital by things being done more on time. And you could have cut those 100 people down to 0, and you're not even close to those numbers. Yeah. So it's really easy when people are talking about automation to come up with and kind of business cases.
This is an issue. I agree. And such stories are not easy to come by either.
No.
Even though there is clear value in freeing people up from dull, repetitive tasks, you've got sometimes smart people doing dull jobs like chasing invoices and doing that kind of work. With the human interaction, empathizing with customers is one thing. Chasing or disputing an invoice from a supplier. Chasing an invoice from a customer or disputing an invoice from a supplier over and over and doing that 100 times a day. That doesn't seem like a lot of fun.
I'm with you on that. I'm not sure I'd sign up for it
and we hear like AI is going to displace jobs, right? But I'm pretty sure, some of them should be displaced because they shouldn't exist. There shouldn't be people doing it. So actually, people should not be doing those jobs. They should learn a new job. Now, I understand this might sound a bit harsh, but it's the truth. Right?
There is lots of areas where, the kind of stuff that we've been talking about there in finance, where it is, they are as honorable as any job, but they are blooming boring. And there are better things, literally better things that people can be spending their time doing. Yeah.
Right. Like working with other people. For example.
Like working with other people, like doing green brick stuff and pink brick stuff.
Yeah.
Because the best stories that I've got in one of my favorite examples from one of our customers, an insurance company called Upmost, was they created a load of capacity and they saved from that in their insurance operation, but they actually then let some measures that they used to really focus on, like how long people spend on calls. They just let those drift. They stopped focusing on them as no, you got to get off the phone quick. They just let them drift. And because they'd created enough capacity that people could spend time on the phone with the customers.
Mm-hmm.
And that had two big knock-ons. One was they had a marked and substantial improvement in employee happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Quote, people are happy coming to work. And they had a marked change in customer satisfaction. You know, the other side of the quote to that is, and now we're measuring the business in terms of compliments, not complaints.
Right.
Now, those two together, you go, yeah, great, that's all lovey-dovey, but the finance director is still going to be going, yeah, and I want my software paid for and all of those kind of things.
Yeah.
The upshot of it, though, was great. You have people who have enough time to do a job that they're proud of. And that tends to be the driver of satisfaction, is being able to do something that you're proud of. Yeah. And you've got customers who are feeling they're getting a great service because they're working with somebody who's proud of what they're doing for them. Well, guess what? News of that gets around. And when you're dealing with insurance brokers who are, will follow the path of least resistance, they end up doing more business. So that's so that business case was they've started outgrowing their competitors. Yeah. And that's what the great business cases and ones like that. Either you are affecting the top line by just driving more growth, or you're affecting one of those really big fundamental, you're doing something radical about cost of overpayments, or doing something radical about working capital.
Yeah, that's true. But those not always easy to come by. Those very very easy. There's like obvious business cases. And
we were on job
freeing up people from dull tasks, repetitive tasks, giving them time to do other things that are more creative, that have to do with working with customers. This has value, but it's difficult to measure, right? And it's still a challenge. I still see it as a challenge to sometimes when you're pitching something around automation using whatever kind of technology. That's the challenge. Now, what is your business case here? And we also try to help that as a company for customers, that they can see that it's not just about the time you save or the resources you save. It's about the opportunity that you create, which is sometimes not immediately measurable. If you have cases like that where you actually are cutting on fraud, or you are cutting, or you are making more capital available, then that's obvious. And we also had the case with insurance where we helped with some automation of we helped free some capital that was allocated to reserves that was just didn't need to be there anymore.
Yeah.
But in order to find that out, you needed to go through contracts and check that some of those reserve clauses expired for some of the contracts. You had to have people doing manual work in order to free up working capital. And that had a huge impact. But first, it was necessary first to introduce that tool that actually helped screen contracts. And for another case where it was a case for automation of work, contract review and things like that. And then we recycled that kind of capability to a more finance use case, and then it paid out 100 times. So it was a similar situation. So AI, you said that AI and especially generative AI is going to bring more and more automation to business processes, whatever. So What do you see that's going to happen in the next 6 months? I'm not going to ask you the next 2 years because nobody knows, but let's talk about the next 3 to 6 months, where, and not the new technology because we don't know what's coming.
Yeah.
The technology that already exists today and is available today, what is that? Where is that going to help? Where are the changes that you're seeing?
So I kind of break this down into almost thinking about people's job titles. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If your job title involves the words create or write or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you write software, if you write content, if you create imagery, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Then most people who have jobs that have got that in the title will be either already or should be thinking very hard about how they do so quickly, using our generative AI tool as part of what they're doing. Yeah. As a co-pilot, as a as an extra go-go gadget arm. Yeah. It is because it's super low risk. And the reason it's super low risk, so I've got a team in my business who we've said, look, the first cut of your code needs to be AI written. Yeah, so we've done it with one team as an experiment. First cut of all of your code is written by AI, and then we're into working alongside and co-piloting. But the reason that's super low risk is great. It's the first cut of the code, but there are then 7 layers of testing it goes through before it gets in the hands of a customer. So it's not that risky. In the kind of, so everybody in those kind of worlds, just use it because it's low risk. And it'll give you a productivity boost. In the worlds where job titles include things like deliver and execute and control and things like that. Yeah. So like finance, where we were talking about like insurance, those kind of areas. That's where I see 2 use cases where we're going to see a generative AI involved. So we've got customers right now who are using generative AI for some of those categorization and extraction things. Yeah. Because it's another thing that we will see about AI is the pace at which things become obsolete will be extraordinary. So we've got our customer who they were using a product that UiPath bought called Reinfer, which got called UiPath Communication Mining, which was a thing for reading emails and categorizing emails. They'd spent months trying to train a model to read these emails and categorize them.
Yeah, it's a level of magnitude better what LLMs could do.
And exactly. And then GPT appears, and it is, and that product, which UiPath spent tens of millions buying, went from useful to instantly obsolete,
right?
Overnight, yeah. And that will be a pattern, yeah. So having something where you've gone, here is my intelligent document processing tool. It is the intelligent document processing tool that I will use for the next 10 years. That is a fool's errand. Assume that you're going to replace it with one that's a bit better in a year, 2 years at the most.
Right. So architecture is quite important, right?
Yeah.
You need to think architecture, and that these bricks are the way these bricks are executed or can be replaced.
You architect, one of the principles of orchestration, I think, is you architect that you can switch things in and out as and when there's something better to switch in and out. Yeah.
Right. And avoid vendor lock, avoid being is it a threat to what you guys do? Can generative AI eventually replace what you guys do, or is that still far off?
Yeah, it can eventually. Not in our.
For example, if we're talking about agents and things like that.
Not in our 3 to 6 months kind of time frame.
Yeah.
But there is a way that you can think about the entire world of business process. Of business process and standard operating procedures and all those kind of things. Really, all that they are there to do comes back to the point that we're making in the beginning. All they are there to do is to be an interface between constraints within data.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you cannot have an invoice that goes past this point unless it's got a purchase order on it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. An invoice must have these bits of data associated with it. Those kind of basic data constraints. And the policies that a business implements. So I have a policy that, you can't buy something more than $10,000, but I can buy something up to $100,000 or whatever it is. So I've got policies and I've got data that's got constraints within it. And the entire world of business process has evolved to be the kind of interfacing layer between those two kind of hard facts. Now, actually, you're a smart guy. If I give you the policy document and I give you the data rules, you'd figure out, okay, I don't need to do this. This is what I can do. And this is the order I can do things in to do this work within that policy.
Right.
Generative AI at some point will be able to do that as well.
Yeah.
To go, here's the policy, here's the data, here's my understanding of the data constraints. Go just do this within policy.
Yeah. And we are still a bit far away from that. Well, how far away, I don't know. It's still not there yet, let's say.
And
but it is conceivable that you can actually have generative AI figure out the task based on some representation of the problem in some guide, and that's the policy. And you just say, okay, now do it, figure it out.
Yeah.
And but they need these agency capabilities that they don't have yet. Developing plugins is going in that direction.
Yep, exactly.
And at some point they will start getting into that figuring things out kind of mode, and it's very exciting. So does this perspective excite you or scare you or both? Both.
I think anybody who isn't a bit scared about where we might land with AI over the relatively short time, actually, is not really either
not paying attention,
ignorant, or they're unnecessarily lowballing it and unrealistically lowballing it. I think the when I stand right back, I've done some broadcasts about this recently. I think the extant threats, the threats that exist right now around generative AI are all to do with, or very largely to do with, misinformation. We've got a big election that will happen in the UK next year. The US has got a big election that will happen next year. The quantity of AI generated misinformation that will potentially really screw around with those. That's the scary thing for me right now.
I agree.
And
it's not an easy problem to solve. How do you because you can't really distinguish one from the other.
Well, it is really, it's something that that I think the only way that you solve that actually is regulation, watermarking, regulation around watermarking, and then dealing with the consequences of that. I mean, it has to be toothsome regulation. It's got to be in the, this is like forging banknotes kind of level.
Like watermarking AI content, certifying human content somehow. So there's different movements around that. Maybe you need.
I think my model for it is models over a certain number of parameters and probably some other corners. Great. Those must have a watermarking algorithm. That's So you legislate for that. They must be accompanied by a free service by whoever creates it. to validate the watermark.
Mhm.
Creating an LLM that isn't watermarked and doesn't have a free service, that's where, that's at the go to jail kind of territory.
Okay.
And if you want to use a service like that within a service that you're providing,
Mhm.
you just like there are right to work legislation, it's on you as a consumer to validate that it's a watermarked, etc., service.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm
Those are all good ideas. Yeah.
I'm deliberately not pussyfooting around with it because it's like,
well, we need something like that, because otherwise, the degree of mistrust, the degree of lack of trust that we will have will be so high that this will undermine democracy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we don't have an alternative system to democracy yet.
Certainly not a good one.
Certainly not a good one, exactly. And we need to clearly do something about this. But the tech standards for that don't exist yet. So this is not something that's going to happen very fast. Certainly not before those elections. So
yeah.
What advice would you give to people? So how do you protect yourself from misinformation? And what would you tell somebody that asked you, how do I protect myself from misinformation?
So it's a bit of understanding it through different sources. Yeah. And
fact checking, for example.
Yeah.
Is this so don't trust anything that you read online.
Yeah.
Unless you need to check it a few times in different places.
And misinformation, let's face it, misinformation's been bad enough through social media for the last few years. Before we even had AI to automatically generate it. Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's going to be,
and now it's just going to be worse. So it is just check as much as you can. I'm pretty cautious about what I go. That is fact, particularly for things that are presented through in social media. I just take it with a big pinch of salt.
So who do you trust in? Like classic media?
Yeah, so I trust some classic media more. Yeah. Although, they will generally follow in behind a Twitter storm slightly overactively anyway. Yeah. Just variety of sources. So if actually there is, if something's quoting some research, just go and read the top bit of the research. Yeah. If it's something that is that's claiming to be kind of geopolitical fact, see if you can actually find it out from more than one source that might be just really far apart. Yeah. But it is bloody hard. Yeah. Ultimately, you can't really protect yourself against it entirely. Yeah.
But you can try, right?
Yeah, you can try. Yeah. And that's, but we all get suckered by something at some point.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm also both excited and a bit scared. I think it's the potential of the technology is enormous. Not just generative AI, but all the AI technology out there. But it's also scary. And especially misinformation is the biggest thing. Yeah.
Exactly. So the stuff I'm excited about is the stuff that is about helping work be better for a lot of people, helping businesses actually create time to focus on their customers and do even more amazing things for their customers. That's the areas that I'm really excited about. I'm also really excited about at the meta level, the productivity bump. Yeah, we've got at the high level, we have every Western democracy at least has some kind of demographic time bomb occurring where they're ending up with a lot more old people than they have your working age people, or not more,
Yeah.
but the
Well,
ratio
unless-
of non-working age to working age is changing, and that the only way that gets paid for is by a really big increase in productivity. And AI
yeah,
is
or immigration.
or immigration.
But that's a different
But
topic.
even then, that's only a short-term fix for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that just kicks it down to the next generation.
Exactly.
AI is the technology that will help us deal with that productivity problem. The technology that will help us deal with that. And
I'm also more are you more of an optimistic or a cynic in this?
Look, nobody goes and sets up any kind of business unless they're an optimist, I think. No,
I agree with you.
Everyone that knows me will go, I'm fairly extreme optimist.
Well, I can relate. Believe me, I also started a business myself, and sometimes I think you need to be a little bit crazy, a little bit too optimistic. Otherwise, you really can't go through adversity. Thank you for joining us, Kit. It was it was a lot of fun, very interesting and fun conversation. Anything you'd like to add?
So not much really. I'm just going to say thank you. I loved it. It was a great chat. And let's end on that optimistic note. There is great stuff that's going to happen. There's great stuff that we're doing. There's great stuff that loads of people in this space are doing.
I agree. I'm also mostly excited about the future. I have never seen such hype, such excitement, and also willingness for companies and organizations to do something. And this is very positive. Thanks again for joining us. Thank you for listening and for watching our podcast. If you're watching, don't forget to give us a like on YouTube and to subscribe to our channel, or to subscribe to our audio channels like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Thanks again. It was fun.
Thanks.